what we're gonna do, it's comparative across, hola, hello. It's comparative across between the chapters in Daniel and the chapters in Revelation that we've looked at. You're nice, the front row Baptist. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna look at these, and and hopefully this will be a little bit clearer, because we're not gonna cover everything that those chapters cover, but we're gonna cover what is parallel to other verses in other places in the Bible, or in between Daniel and Revelation, okay? So turn with me to Daniel 2. And if you remember, this is the chapter where Nebuchadnezzar had his dream, and you remember what his dream was about.
The statue.
The statue. Okay, so that's Daniel 2, and the statue was divided in how many parts? 4. Okay, and we also saw that he was given specifically who the first part of that statue, and what was that detail?
The head of the.
Yep, it was the head of gold, and who was the head of gold?
Hold on.
Yeah, and you guys you're both right in saying that. And so when we think about a country, or a king and a kingdom, those words are used interchangeably in the Bible. So to associate a king and a kingdom, like we use Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, that is an accurate interpretation of that, okay? And then what did we get after that? What was the second part of the statue?
Breast of silver.
Yep, the breast and arms of silver. And we said, and this is going to be confirmed as we continue to go through Daniel, okay? So if you've taken this as a grain of, oh, maybe, maybe not, we'll see. Well, it'll be more confirmed as we go through the book, okay? We said that was the Medes and the Persians. And then we have the third part of the statue, which was?
Belly and thighs of bronze.
Yep, belly and thighs of bronze. Is that how you spell thighs?
Yes.
Thank you. You're all better spellers than me.
Too wise.
You almost had me going, Dan.
Oh.
And then I considered the source. I'm not going. And that was the country of Greece, and again, that will also be confirmed. And then the fourth is
The legs of iron.
legs of iron. And specifically, the focus was on what?
The toes.
The feet and the toes, yep.
Oh.
And how many toes do most of us have? 10, okay. Alright, so, and this was wrong. Okay, and then we saw in Daniel 7, we saw, how is Babylon described in Daniel 7?
Lion.
A lion. And how was the Medes and the Persians described in Daniel 7?
Bear.
And again, each one of the details have symbolism that's attached to it, and we'll appreciate some of those more as we continue to go through, or as we've talked about. So, and what about Greece? What was it?
Leopard.
Yep,
The four-headed leopard.
yep, it had 4 heads, and it also had wings. So you have a fast animal that's very fast. Okay, and then how was Rome described in Daniel 7?
Terrifying.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Dreadful. Terrible.
Terrible, okay. Dreadful, terrifying, any kind of word, and again, he wasn't given an animal to describe, he didn't have an animal to describe. Yeah, it's just a beast, okay. And what was on that dreadful, terrifying, what was on it?
The
10 horns.
The horns.
And then there was a little, what?
Mouthy horn.
Mouthy horn, okay. I think you're the first group that's ever come up with that, and it will last forever. if I teach it anymore. Okay, so then we had a mouthy horn, and that mouthy horn got rid of three, and so the new math says that that's 8, okay? And the old math. Okay, so that's what we looked at from Daniel, okay? And then look at Daniel 7 on that chart. Look at Daniel 7, 25 and 26. Remember Daniel got the cliff notes when he went up to someone standing there and he goes, hey, tell me about that. And the cliff notes was, there's 4 kings and the saints are gonna inherit, you know, the kingdom. And he goes, no, I wanna know the details. And this is some of the details that he was given. And what are some of the details that we get about that mouthy horn, mouthy person? What are some of those details?
Speak out against God.
Yep. What else?
He'll persecute the saints.
Yep, persecutes the saints, intends to alter time and law. So if he can alter time and law, what does that tell us about him?
Powerful.
He's powerful, okay? And then how long is he gonna do this thing?
A time and a time
There
and
we
a half
go.
a time.
And we know that that's 3.5 years, and we know what stops him. What stops him? Jesus, okay? So that's what we looked at in Daniel chapter 2. That's what we looked at in Daniel chapter 7. We're gonna go back to Revelation 12. And we're gonna hit a few verses in Revelation 12, 13, and 17.
I like
Okay.
this chart.
Huh?
I said I like this chart.
You can thank Donnie, he did the
Don't
repairs.
give me credit. Don't
No,
do
it
that.
was.
It was you.
No,
Don't
he
do
did-
that.
He did the
Next
repair.
time it needs to be cross-referencing.
Some highlights.
That's how
Color-coded.
that's how my charts of work goes.
That's how
Oh,
mine.
no.
That's how my mind works too. You take those opportunities when you do.
Okay, so we want to turn to Revelation 12, and we're going to go ahead and read verses 3 and 4. What do we see in Revelation 12, 3 and 4? Wait, okay, let me tell you this. There's a woman in 1 and 2. And I don't want to take the time to read those, but we can look at verse 5, is it? Is it verse 5?
First line, it depends on which.
She gave birth to the son?
Yes.
We're in Revelation now?
Yes, we are. So that woman, what's the identity of that woman? If she gave birth to a son and that son is going to rule the world with a rod of iron, that's Jesus. And so who gave birth to Jesus? Mary, but it's bigger than Mary. Israel.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Can I ask a question on
you
that?
sure
Israel?
can. Huh?
Is that the church or is it just specifically Israel?
And that's a really good question, because a lot of times, and it's really important as we continue to the end, we'll emphasize it a little bit more, especially in chapter 9, that this is about Israel.
Okay.
Remember, the church is gone.
Okay.
The church has been raptured. This is about Israel, and this is the time when 2/3 of the nation of Israel will die, 1/3 will be saved. Okay? So it's a time of great tribulation, and we'll look at that more closely, and we'll just continue to affirm. But a lot of people like to put the church into where he's talking about Israel as a substitute. That's not accurate. Okay? Alright, so the woman then is who? This is good stretching. Huh? Yeah. Revelation 12, the woman is Israel. Okay? We got another character, and that's what, 3 and 4? Can you read? Somebody read that?
Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born.
Okay, so when we see this red dragon, and then we can look at verse 9, and if you look at verse 9, we know the identity of this dragon, and that's the consistent identity as we look at the dragon in chapter 17 as well. So, or 13, excuse me. So who is the dragon in verse 9? It's Satan. That's exactly right. Okay, so now when I want you to think of this, okay? Think of this as history. And think of this as being current, okay? And we're gonna get into that again shortly, but think of that way, okay? So, when we hear the 10 horns, what do we wanna do?
The 10 toes?
Yeah, we wanna go, is there a connection between the 10 toes and the 10 horns? And we kinda wanna make that connection, and we'll see what that connection is, okay? So let's turn to Revelation 12, 7 through 10, and let's read, no, I want to do this backwards. Let's go to Job, okay? Let's go to Job, and let's read Job 1, 6 and 7. We are coming back to 12, so.
Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Hast thou not made a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and the possessions have increased in the land."
Okay, so since you're on your roll, would you go to 2 and do, what is 2? 1 and 2. Yeah.
Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it."
Okay, so we can learn something about Satan here. What is it that we can learn about Satan in these verses?
He walks a lot.
He walks a lot, yeah, he gets his steps in, right?
He's got his sneakers.
Okay, so, and we find him where? On earth, and in heaven.
Wherever good,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, and then we wanna figure out who are the sons of God, and if we took the time to cross-reference that, and you don't have to take my word for it, and you can check it out and see, but almost every time sons of God is used, it is in reference to
Angel.
angels. Okay, so here we have Satan coming with angels before God's throne. Now we want to go back to Revelation 12, okay? You're going to find different interpretations of these verses about this war in heaven, okay? We're not going to cover those, but you can check them out. They're out there.
We're going back to 12, right?
Yes, we're in Revelation 12, 7 through 10, and we're going to read about a war in heaven, okay?
Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down."
Okay, so when he appeared before God, what did he have to say about Job? God says, "Hey, have you checked out my servant Job?" And how does he respond?
Said, "Yeah, you look what you done for him."
Yeah, you're protecting him.
Yeah.
I would serve you too if you protected me. Yeah. So he's and so that accuser of our brother, and so that's what he has access to the throne of God. I don't know why, and I don't understand that. But this is just what God says. He has access to his throne. There's a point in time where he won't have access to his throne. And it's Michael and his angels throwing Satan and his angels out of heaven, and they won't be able to return. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
And it may not even be relevant to this, it's just, timing, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So it says that he was hurled out to the earth.
Right.
So, was Satan kicked out of heaven after God created the heavens and the earth and everything in it?
And
Or
that-
did that war happen beforehand?
And that's what you're gonna have people question. When is the timing of that? And, based on what is happening with Job, that gives us some insight into, otherwise really we wouldn't know that Satan had access, or that he's the accuser of our brother, but we wouldn't know that he has access to the throne.
Yeah. Because obviously he was in the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
And all that took place within, well, see, everything was created in 6 days, so.
Right. And so there's where I think we have to look at context, okay? And I think that's where I think it's at the end where he's thrown down. And one of the things, and we didn't pick it up when we were in Daniel, but Daniel 12:1 says, and Michael stands, and there's a great tribulation coming, and Michael, your prince. So he's considered Israel's angel, is Michael. And we see this war in heaven, okay? Michael and his angels, okay? We see Satan being thrown down. Let's see what he does, and he's mad. He's hopping mad. And let's see what he does once he's thrown down. And that, to me, puts it future in our time. So let's read 12 through 14. Twelve through 14, yeah.
Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and excuse me, 12 through 13, right? 12 through
14.
12 through.
Yep.
Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. Now when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly to the wilderness and to her place where she was nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent.
I don't think you can explain that with what happened in Genesis. I think you can explain that it's future in our time because of the persecution of the woman, which parallels what we just looked at in Daniel. And so that's where it is across from Daniel, where we see the persecution of the saints. If the church is gone, and the tribulation is primarily for the nation of Israel, there are going to be converted Jews that are going to, come to Christ during that, and those are the ones that are going to either flee or deal with the enemy. Okay, you have to be able to figure out how does that fit if it happened in Genesis. And clearly he gives us a time in here. And what's the time that he gives us? And we know again, the woman is Israel. And what does he do once he's thrown down from heaven?
Rages against the earth.
Pursues the woman.
Pursues the woman.
Yep. And what happens?
She flees. She gets away from him.
Yep. And then what does he do? Look at 17. What does he do? Because she is protected, and what do we see that she does? Or what the dragon does, because she's protected. Who he's pursuing is going to be protected for how long?
3.5 years.
Yeah, and I'm always going to want to pay attention to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to fit what we're talking about, but we certainly know 3.5 years is critical to the end of time. Okay? So we wanna pay attention, is this event consistent with what we can be told other places, so that we can add maybe some details. But he goes after the woman, and she's miraculously saved, and then look at verse 17, what he does after that.
He went on to wage war against the rest of her offspring.
So he's going after those that, and then always keep in mind Matthew 24:15, maybe that's one verse we'll all memorize. When you see the abomination of desolation in the holy place, let the reader understand. Get out of Dodge. And there's gonna be a great tribulation. And it's about Jews getting out of Dodge, because he uses Jewish statements. Again, people will try to plug the church in there, but if we read through that, we're gonna find out that there's Jewish implications. Don't go on the Sabbath, pray that it won't be in winter, and all these different things that fit the Jews, and it's talking about Israel. And this woman is Israel, okay? So, that's what he's gonna do. He's gonna be mad because some part of the nation of Israel will be miraculously protected for that 3.5 years, and then part of it will be under intense persecution. Those that don't know what's going on and don't flee. Okay, I personally, I think that when he's thrown down, and I think that's consistent with what we're gonna continue to read in Revelation, is the Antichrist comes into the temple and he says, I'm God. That's what Jesus is saying. He's thrown down, that happens, and then the 3.5 years is going. Okay? Alright, so let's look at any questions there. So hopefully this is a little clearer than it was a few weeks ago. Okay, so we unmuddy the water just a little bit. So look at 13:1. Let's read 13:1.
And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads.
So who is that? I'm sorry. And who is that? The beast that you saw rising out.
The dragon. I would imagine that's the Satan.
Okay, how is he? Okay, so it says, and
10
he,
horns and 7.
does yours say, and he stood?
Unto the dragon stood.
Yeah.
It says blasphemous names on his head.
Okay, so some of us, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it was kind of fun. I'm sorry. But some of us, it says, and he stood on the sand of the seashore. So you get this sense of the dragon standing on the sand of the seashore, and then, I won't interrupt you for one whole verse.
With 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on his horns and blasphemous names on its heads.
Okay, so this is described as what? What is this? Coming out of the sea. It is a beast. So this is important for us because it's not the dragon. The dragon's standing there watching, the beast comes up, okay? And what's the description on the beast?
7 horns and 7 heads.
Okay, and it's confusing because it sounds a lot like this, right? Okay, and we want to put them together. And we're gonna see we should. Okay, so I want you to think like this: 7 heads are history, and 10 horns are current in that time frame, okay? Okay, let's read verse 2. We're gonna get enough more description about the beast.
And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority.
Okay, and where does this come from?
Comes from Satan, the dragon.
It's Daniel.
Yes, it is coming from Daniel. So he's actually referring to these from Daniel chapter 7. He's actually referring to those beasts in Daniel chapter 7.
And 3.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So that part should have been moved down. My bad. All right. So,
Told you guys I didn't do it.
huh? Yeah, this is my fault.
So
There's evidence all over this page.
Yeah.
This one should be up there?
Well, just where parallels the kingdoms. I should have put that up, because that's paralleling all the way across, that was my intention, okay? Alright, so, again, why, okay, now we got 7 heads here on this beast, 10 horns, 7 heads on Satan, 10 horns. Why do we want to, what do we do with that? What do we wanna do with that? Let me ask it that way.
That it is Satan.
Huh?
So you wanna say that it is Satan because it's basically the same.
Okay, so you definitely wanna tie them together. There's some relationship.
I wanna take it literally, I guess. I'm seeing an image coming out of the beast, that's what naturally occurs to me.
Okay.
Yeah, but then it also says that the dragon gave this beast his power.
So that's why they're tied, they have the same characteristics, is because there is a tie. The dragon is giving him, Satan is empowering this beast. Okay?
So he's basically making the beast to reflect Satan, himself.
Yeah, he's empowering, there's a connection between them, and that's the right idea, and that's why we want to, and what gets confusing is if we don't identify the dragon is Satan, and this beast is a kingdom, or a king, and then we're gonna talk about that some more here, okay? Alright, let's look at Revelation 13:3.
13:3.
Yes. And we're gonna learn something else about this beast, okay?
One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast.
Okay, so there is an event that's gonna take place, and it is going to be, and whether it's real or whether it's faked, we don't know, but he's gonna have a fatal wound. And remember, kings and kingdoms are interchangeable, so this king is gonna have a fatal wound, it's gonna look like it's healed, and he's gonna come back to life. And what's gonna be the result?
People will follow.
Yep, people are gonna be amazed. This is a miracle. Okay, they weren't, but what is that an imitation of?
It's imitation of Christ.
Yes, it is.
Resurrection, but.
Yes.
As
Somebody
a
said
sin.
one horn the Antichrist.
But the verse says, as if
As if, yes.
it had been slain. It didn't say it was slain.
And so it's could be definitely a fake death, but it's gotta seem so real that the whole earth thinks it's real, and a fake resurrection. We just don't know. All we have is, and we really have very little to go on, but here in chapter 17.
But that's obviously the way it looks.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. And then some people will say, well, it's the kingdom has come back. And it doesn't appear just to be the kingdom, it appears to be associated with the roof. Okay? Alright, so let's read 4 through 7. Oh, do you see that? Okay, a mountain. How about a mountain? Anyway, I see my mistakes in it. So how about, let's read Revelation 13, 4 through 7. It was very tiny. Let's read that. And what do we find out there?
4 through 7.
Yes.
Men worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. They also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise his authority for 42 months.
How long is 42 months?
3.5 years.
Okay, go ahead.
He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation.
Okay. So, what does that sound like?
Christ.
You confused?
Yeah.
Okay,
Are they already raptured?
yeah, this,
The saints?
yeah, but remember who's here. The whole nation of Israel, and you gotta remember the tribulation is about Israel. And there will be Jews who come to Christ. Okay, so that's the confusing piece of that. Okay, and there will be non-Jews who will come to Christ as well, because the gospel will be preached. Last week we said the 144,000 are set apart, and then there's 2 witnesses from heaven who are set apart to give the gospel during this time frame. Okay, all right. So we know for 42 months he's going to do his thing. Sounds like who?
The Antichrist.
Yeah, the Antichrist, or the mouthy little horn, right?
Lawless one.
Yeah. The lawless one we saw in 2 Thessalonians, who walks into the temple, takes a seat, says, I'm God. Okay, and it's all of that is 3.5 years. In that 3.5 year time period. And we'll see next 2 weeks from now what starts it, what ends it, and then the return of Christ. And we'll see that some other details that we're not getting. Daniel is the only one that gives some of these details. It's pretty fascinating. Okay, are we good? All right, then Revelation 13:11 talks about another beast, and that's the false prophet. And Revelation 19:20 tells us the identity of that other beast. And he does signs and wonders. And so we've got this unholy trinity that the whole world is worshiping. Okay? Any questions? Are we good? Okay, let's go to
Hold on, you got Satan, you got the Antichrist, and you've got
the false prophet.
The false prophet.
And he does miracles. He's the one that, and just like he's bringing people to worship, he's doing something to aid the worship of the beast or the Antichrist and Satan. And that's the unholy trinity. Okay?
And the he that stood on the sand of the seashore in the very first verse, that is Satan.
It is Satan You're gonna see some question, is it this, but most scholars do believe it's Satan there, and it makes sense because it's almost like he's calling out, okay, it's your time. And remember what restrains him? 2 Thessalonians tells us he's gonna be restrained until the Holy Spirit is taken out of the way, and the church, and then he's going to not be restrained anymore. And it's almost like these two things are describing the same event in a different way. Right? Okay. Let's turn to 17:3. And this is an angel that John is referring to when he says "and he." So if somebody would read 17:3.
Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. So
the woman is sitting on who? Who's she associated with? The beast. And who's the beast?
The Antichrist.
The Antichrist. So there's an association. We don't care about the woman right now, but we do know that this is the same description other than red is in there. And again, it continues to want us to tie this guy to Satan. And because he's described as the red dragon. Okay?
So
All right.
when you're red, you have 7 heads.
Yep, 7 heads.
10 crowns.
Yep. And keep in mind, 7 heads are history.
10 horns, sorry.
We're going to see it again here. We're going to figure this out in just a minute. 10 horns are current.
So
Okay?
is the woman in this Israel still?
No, this is a different woman. This is I think it's a worldwide false religion, and a lot of people do that came out of Babylon and idolatry, and how that's what most people, if you go back in history and trace false religion, goes back to Babylon. Okay? And we saw that with their conjurers, and they had all their gods, and we see that with each one of these nations that conquered Israel. Okay, so let's read 17:9 through 13. Okay, here's where we're going to get to the 7 heads. He's going to tell us the 7 heads. So would somebody read 9 through 13?
Here is the mind.
I'm sorry. Before, yeah, I was waiting for you to start so I could.
Oh, okay. Here's the mind.
No, wait, no, I really do wanna interject something.
Go ahead.
Okay, so look, in verse 6, John sees the woman riding the beast and he wonders greatly. And look, then the angel that's talking to him, he says, why do you wonder? I'm going to tell you the answer. Okay, so we're just reading what the angel tells John. Now, Elaine, I promise I won't interrupt.
Yeah, I've lost my
I wouldn't even want to speak.
Wait. All right. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And they are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. And the beast, which was and is not, is himself also an 8th, and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast.
Okay, so let's look at verse 10, okay? And what do we find out those 7 heads are? 7 kings. Yeah. Okay, and he says, what's happened to 5 of them?
They've fallen.
They've fallen, okay. So, and then he says 1 is, right? Okay, who, in John's time, who is? Rome, okay? So we know number 6 is Rome, okay? And we just saw in Revelation 13, when he saw the beast coming out, we saw characteristics of some of these kingdoms that came before that actually controlled the nation of Israel. But he actually goes all the way back in history to every kingdom that has been in charge of the nation of Israel. So he goes all the way back to, guesses, thoughts? Egypt. You might see these reversed. It might be Egypt. And the next one? Assyria. What's the next one? Babylon. Okay. Next one? And the next one? Okay. That's their history. This is every nation that has had charge of their territory, their land. And why he adds these 2, I think it's just to give the whole scope of history. And all prophecy in the Bible is about nations that affect Israel or Israel. Those are 2 of the reasons, or 2 of the prophecies, and so we would see all of that history. Okay, what's the next thing that he says?
No one is yet to come.
Okay, the beast, right? Oh yeah. The other has not come. Okay, so we're looking at who this is, and what does Daniel tell us?
Revived.
Yeah, a revived Rome. And he is what is also Daniel tells us? The construction of that last earthly Gentile ruling kingdom. What's on the beast in Daniel 7?
Horns.
Horns, how many?
A bunch.
How about
10 minus 3 plus 1.
Yeah, so we got 10 plus the mouthy horn, minus 3 equals 8. There's your 8th kingdom.
Do you think Daniel didn't speak of Egypt because they weren't yet a nation, even though they were Jews and they were enslaved by Egypt. God had to take them into Exodus before they even became
But
Israelites, right?
If we look at history though, Egypt was still a prominent ruler, and I think it was Babylon, or it's one of these two that conquered Egypt and took them off of the stage. So they were still a rising power, and God speaks a lot about the adultery of the nation of Israel to Egypt, because they kept going to Egypt for help against some of these other countries that were trying to invade them.
So I'm still trying to understand, why would Daniel exclude Egypt? Is it because they weren't really a nation under Egypt? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
They were not, but they did impact them as a nation.
I know, yeah. They
Not
were
all-
Jews.
Yeah, but also later
Their
in
nation
history,
was-
they were around later, and it was either Assyria or Babylon that took them out. Okay,
Yeah, Egypt was around till 30 BC.
right, but it was these guys that rose up to become a prominent power
Yeah, but
over
Egypt wasn't a kingdom like a world kingdom.
And I
for
think
the
that's,
entire time.
yeah,
Oh, there you go.
that's
it.
a good point,
That's it.
thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
And that's, was Daniel's time. And for whatever reason, this is what God had him write about. He had John go all the way back in their history.
This revived Rome, is there any idea of what that will look like?
So if you think about kingdom, king, territory, it will be somewhere where Rome's, if you look at a map and you see what did Rome conquer, and each one of these kingdoms were bigger. And so what territory we would be looking for that person to come out of that territory.
Yeah, control all of Europe.
And some of the Middle East, yeah, but basically all of Europe. And which is why so many people looked at the European Economic Community,
Yeah, the
EU.
world, EU,
Yeah.
European.
But it's,
European
yeah,
Union.
but it's so much bigger. When it hit 10, it's kind of like when Israel was back in their land. Okay, this is it. But then it got 12, and it got 20. But Daniel 2 describes that some of it's strong. Remember the feet and the toes? Some of it's iron, some of it's clay, it's brittle, some of it's strong. So we're gonna see some alignment. And the first time I did Daniel is when the wall came down, the Berlin Wall came down. And it's like, okay, now we got Germany united. And then Russia fell apart. So we just haven't seen this alliance, but that would be the territory, Don,
Yeah,
that
but
we would wanna be looking for.
back to your point about the world kingdoms, though, it's like China's starting to do that again with Russia and Brazil and all the BRICS,
Yeah.
all the BRICS, India. So, how do you,
Well,
that's
China,
obviously not Rome, but
Yeah,
is Rome a metaphor, or is it a actual, you're saying it's actually Rome?
because it's so specific, I don't think it's a metaphor. And also Russia and China, their territory are discussed in Revelation. We're not getting into that because it doesn't parallel Daniel, so they have a role of their own. Okay, where are we? We just did, or did we do all of 14? 13? Okay, let's read 12 through 14 of Revelation 17. We're almost through this. What did I have you read? 12 and 14. 12 through 14, so we're overlapping a little bit.
The 10,
The 10 horns he saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers.
Okay, so here's where we get the 10 horns that we keep seeing on top of, so we've got the 7 heads. Here's the 7 heads, and then he adds an 8th, okay? So that's the 7 heads, that's the identity, so that picture of this, you probably can look at this now and it makes sense to you, I hope. Right? Except for this, which is wrong. It says 12, Revelation 12 in the corner, it should be 7. But that should make sense, and it should, and we, right? Are we good? Okay. What?
Oh, it's cut up, I don't see 12 or 10.
Well, it's cut off.
Did you say that already?
No, I didn't say it, I didn't know it was cut off. It was on the one I put in there, that's all I got to say. Okay.
It's like your handiwork, Jen.
There you go. This is not my strength, I must confess. Okay, it's obvious, I have to confess. Okay, so what's the purpose of the 10 horns? And why are they on the beast? In Daniel and in Revelation. What's the purpose of the 10 horns?
Are they the 10 kings?
Yes, he tells us the 10 horns are 10 kings. And that's consistent with what we saw in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, and here in Revelation 17. And what is the purpose of those 10 kings?
To give their authority to the beast.
Yeah, they're gonna be full cooperation with the beast, and part of his ascension to being worldwide in charge, they're part of his ascension and part of that kingdom that gives him that power and authority. And it starts like this, but somehow it ends like this. It's only Daniel 7 that tells us that. We don't know, unless Daniel 7 tells us.
So where it says for 1 hour they will receive authority, are they receiving authority from Satan? Is that?
That's a good question. I don't wanna answer that, I need to go back and look at that, I'm sorry, but I don't wanna speak out of turn. That's a good question.
Is that one literal hour?
It's a period of time, no, it's not, cause we know that they're around during that 3.5 years, and we don't know what happens to them. We don't know, they give the authority to the beast, and then are they still there, and they're just giving him their territory, their land, their support? We don't know how that
Sounds
plays
like
out.
they assume their kingdom and then turn over the authority to the beast.
Yeah,
You come into power,
yes,
you say, I'm the ruler of this kingdom, but ultimate authority is,
it sounds that way, for sure.
that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, it sure does. Okay, Ed, afterward, I'm gonna ask you your question, and then I'm gonna go, I'll bring that up next week, okay?
Okay.
Alright, okay, so does Revelation 12, 13, and 17 make a little bit more sense than when we went through it a couple of weeks ago? Do you have any questions about that, besides it? Okay. So now I need you to put on your Daniel hat. We're gonna go to Daniel, we're gonna get as far with this. Again, we'd be in great shape if I hadn't messed it up a couple of weeks ago, but we're gonna turn to Daniel chapter 8. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna go as far as we can get through, and then we're gonna finish next week, and then we're gonna go into the first part of chapter 9 next week. So I didn't bring homework. If you wanna read the first 20 verses of Daniel chapter 9, that's what we're gonna cover next week, okay? Before we start this, I do wanna, you have the dates on your paper, okay? It's important for us to keep these dates in mind, especially as we go through Daniel chapter 8. It always is, but we're gonna see this huge, it's just gonna be interesting to compare time and what Daniel writes, okay? So let's read Daniel chapter 8, verses 1 and 2. And let's see when he got this vision.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. And I looked in the vision, and it came about when I was looking that I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Olnai canal.
Okay, so when does he get this vision?
Third.
Yeah, so this is back in Belshazzar's time, the 3rd year of his reign. And I've got 539, is that right? No, that's not right. 553 BC approximately is the 3rd year of his reign. So 553 BC. And the description that he gave of where he saw this vision taking place, if you went and looked, so you've got on your paper, you've got Nehemiah 1:1 and Esther 1:2, right? That's going to tell you where he was, what he saw in his vision. And we're not going to turn there, we're just going to tell you it's the capital city of Persia. And so that's where he's seeing his vision. It's the capital city of Persia. And so let's read verses 3 and 4, and let's see and Daniel's going to describe some more animals. So what do we got?
I looked up, and there before me was a ram with 2 horns, standing beside the canal, and the horns were long. One of the horns was longer than the other, but grew up later. I watched the ram as he charged toward the west, and the north, and the south. No animal could stand against him, and none could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great.
Okay, we're going to do this a little bit different because I think it is maybe a little bit easier. So look, let's turn to Daniel 8, verse 20. Okay, yes, verse 20. Let's read verse 20. We're going to find out who the ram is.
The ram which you saw with the 2 horns represents the kings of Media and Persia. Pretty explicit.
Yep. So there's no guessing here. He's describing the Medes and the Persians. And that also reinforces, because the bear was raised up on one side, it had a dominant side. The Persians were the dominant kingdom of this joined kingdom. And so the 2 horns, the 2 countries, one longer, the domination of the Persians. Ram was raised up on one side. So we've got a bear from chapter 7 was raised up on one side, okay? So the reason these directions are here, all but one direction is not, why do you think that's true? So they're conquering Babylon, so they're conquering, and he came from the east. So that's the direction he came from. And he conquered in every direction except for the direction he came from. They'd already conquered that. Okay? Alright, now go back with me and let's read Daniel 8, 5 through 8.
While I was watching, suddenly a male goat appeared from the west, crossing the land so swiftly that he didn't even touch the ground. This goat, which had one very large horn between its eyes, headed toward the 2-horned ram that I had seen standing beside the river, rushing at him in rage. The goat charged furiously at the ram and struck him, breaking off both of his horns. Now the ram was helpless, and the goat knocked him down and trampled him. No one could rescue the ram from the goat's power. You said 8 too?
Through 8, yes.
The goat became very powerful, but at the height of his power, his large horn was broken off. In the large horn's place grew 4 prominent horns pointing in the 4 directions of the earth.
So that's pretty straightforward, right? Sure. Sure? Okay. this is what he describes, this is what he sees. Now if we turn to 21 and 22, that's where we're gonna get an interpretation of what was going on here, okay? So read, 21 and 22.
Shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king. The 4 horns that replace the one that was broken off represent 4 kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power.
So who conquered the Medes and the Persians?
Greece.
Greece. So that's consistent with history. It's consistent with what we've seen spelled out, because again, it's the nations that affect the nation of Israel. And that was, Israel became a part of these guys, okay? Alright, so the first king was, and what else happened? They conquered the ram, so that's the Medes and the Persians. What happens to the large horn?
Breaks off.
It breaks off. And what happens after that?
4 horns replacing.
4 horns replaced, okay? And does it say 4 kings?
4 kingdoms that
Yeah.
will emerge from his nation, but
Okay.
will not have the same power.
So if we look at Greece's history, we're gonna say the first king was who?
Alexander.
Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great conquered the known world in 10 years. So when you have, that's why the goat is floating. It's not touching the ground, it's because he's moving fast. That's why in chapter 7, the leopard is a fast animal. You put wings on a leopard, it's really fast. Okay? That's how Alexander the Great conquered the known world. And he was 32 when he died. And and something interesting is he tried to get Israel to support him, and as he was kind of going up, as Rome was rising, he was kind of going up against them. They weren't Rome yet, and he wanted Israel to support them, and they refused to. So when they conquered him, the high priest meets him outside of Jerusalem, takes Daniel chapter 8, and goes, hey, this is you. And you're going to totally defeat the Medes and the Persians. And so that made him not do anything bad to them. And he just left them, and he sacrificed something in the temple, and he went on. Okay? So, and then when he died, he did not have a legitimate heir. So 4 kings are 4 generals who divided up his kingdom. So that's what happened to the nation of Greece. Now let's go back and keep in mind, okay, this always fascinated me, and I never was, this is like, okay, Greece hits the scene, what's the year? 331 to 146. They hit the 331, and he's writing this in 553 BC. So there's 200 years of history, future in his time. This is what people don't like about the Bible, is that it has to be history, had to be written after all of these events took place, because no person can predict the future this accurately. Okay? And that's why it comes under such a scrutiny. But there's a long time period that's covered in here, and there's a reason for it. One of the other things I want to point out, Alexander the Great was known for its roads. Greece created a highway and connected the world. They also created a common language that the Bible was translated in, and that missionaries in the future would take those roads to take the gospel to people, because of what Greece did as a world ruler. Okay, so you got 4 kings, and we want to look at 8:16 through 19. And let's read 16 through 19.
And I heard the voice of a man between the banks of the Lie, and he called out and said, Gabriel, give this man an understanding of the vision. So he came near to where I was standing, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end. Now while he was talking with me, I sank into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. But he touched me and made me stand upright. And he said, Behold, I'm going to let you know what will occur at the final period of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end.
Okay, so the reason that he wants Daniel to have an understanding about what's going on here, he gives him a time frame. What is that time frame?
The end of time?
Yep. It pertains to the end. Okay? It doesn't say it is the end. It says it pertains to the end. Okay? And what else does it say? That final period of indignation. Okay? So he wants him to have this understanding before he gives him the interpretation. Okay? And we're going to go back and we're going to look at the rest of his vision, what he got. Okay? So let's look at, let's start in 9. I didn't ask you this question, but it is on the paper. What would Greece have to do with the final period of indignation? We don't want to confuse these horns with the horns on the beast, right? They're not the same. Why are they not the same?
They don't give their authority.
Okay, they are in the past, and they don't give their authority. There's a different number.
Right.
We got a rather small horn we're going to talk about here in just a minute, not to be confused with the big mouth horn.
They're not red.
And it's on what nation? Greece. Where are those 10 horns? Rome.
Not good.
But there's something going on with Greece that pertains to the end. Okay, so let's go on. Let's read 9 through 12.
And out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and it trampled them down. And it magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. And on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper.
Okay, what does that sound like? What does that sound like? Where's he going to do his thing, first of all? Where's he going to be doing his thing?
South and east of the beautiful land.
Okay, and how do you know what's the beautiful land? How do you know?
Israel.
Israel, and how do you know it's true?
Because it says glorious land of Israel.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. I think that's why you came tonight.
Glad I could help.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, notice that he's removed the regular sacrifice of God. Where would that be? The temple. What does that sound like?
Antichrist.
Sounds like the Antichrist. It pertains to the end. So if we look at history, we're going to go, is there a guy that came out of one of these 4 generals' territory that did this stuff in history? And when would it be, too? What does it say? When would he show up? Where does it say the latter part of their rule?
23.
23, thank you. Okay. So in the latter part of their rule, this is what's going to happen. And again, he's going to repeat what he saw. Okay? So, we should be able to look at Greece We should be able to look at Greece and go, how long did Greece go to? 146 BC, and see someone in the latter part of their rule that did these things.
My notation said that it was Antiochus Epiphanes.
Antiochus Epiphanes
Right,
IV.
and he came to the throne in 175 BC, and he plundered the temple in Jerusalem,
Yep.
desecrating it by offering pig's flesh on the altar.
Set up Zeus.
He offered pig's flesh.
Yep,
on
he did. And he outlawed their their traditional, their Jewish practices. So if a mom had went ahead and did the circumcision, they would kill the baby and tie it around the mom's neck. And and he was mad because he had lost a war. So when you think about, so we're going to get into it, chapter 11, the king of the north, the king of the south. Every time they battle, they go through Israel. It's the closest route. So he's upset, he gets turned back, and he camps out in Jerusalem, and he wreaks havoc in Jerusalem. And the Jews today celebrate the temple being cleaned up and given back to God. Do you know what that celebration is? Hanukkah. That's what it is. And the Maccabees revolted, and the high priest revolted, and eventually they booted him out, and they were able to restore the temple, and it was a celebration of the restoration of the temple, and that's what that meant. So, and again, because we have the benefit of history, we can see all of these things. And this guy is 300 and some years from the time that Daniel saw this vision. And we have a guy in history, I think we have two, I think Adolf Hitler is another one, but the Bible doesn't talk about him. But there's a guy in history who impacted the nation of Israel, who looks a lot like the future Antichrist, and yet it's child's play.
And he came out of the part of the former Roman Empire.
Yeah, and the two countries in this book is Greek. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Germany was part of the Holy Roman Empire.
Well, yeah, that's interesting, yeah. Okay, so these are the two Seleucid, can't remember, I got it on my paper. These are the two generals. You can't read that way? So it's the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. Those are two of the generals, and that's the two generals that they're gonna focus on, because they're the two that go back and forth through Israel when they fight each other. And Israel changes hands of who's got hold of the territory based on the wars that they fight.
Yeah, if you look at geography of that area, everything that happened coming, it passed through where Israel is now, because you have mountains and stuff to the north. Mount Hermon is up there, and then you have deserts back down to the south, the Sinai and all that. And the Egyptians coming in would come up through Israel, the Greeks would come through there, or the Persians coming out and coming down like that. It was just a geological highway.
Yeah, okay.
They had to come through that
thank you,
area.
Tom. Okay, anybody else? You did good. We got through 8, and so we can be, so next week we're gonna do the first 20 verses of chapter 9. And then the following week there's 4 verses, well really we're gonna look at 6 or 7 verses in chapter 9. Those are very fascinating verses. Okay. Would somebody like to close?
Heavenly Father, just thank you for this day. Thank you for the message that you've given to us, and Lord, just remind you of your power. And we're just thankful for your mercy and forgiveness, Lord, and just ask that we turn to you in all we do. Be with us and just go throughout the remainder of this week, and just help us to turn to you in everything that we need. In your name.